Hello, everybody.
Oh, hello.
Today we are going to be doing another deck profile of Darkness Ablaze. And for this one I wanted to tackle Salamence. Now, there are a ton of ways that you can build a Salamence deck. It's a colorless Pokemon. Takes colorless energy cost. Easy. You have, I know Shay from the Slowpoke Well has already done a Colossal engine, already done a Welder engine. There's more that I'm sure he's thought of and I'm thinking of too. But today, I wanted to just go, as straightforward as possible. We built this one on Twitch. So if you want to see, when I do stream, which is honestly maybe once a week, twice a week most right now, mostly because I want to be streaming this testing, but I'm streaming testing of Darkness Ablaze stuff live. So the battle videos you will see, which if you like this deck, you can see it in action in a battle video that I already released. Link in the description for that. But we built this one on stream. So people were watching us actually live, going through my cards on this table behind me, just building the deck, giving suggestions. So this is a Welder-based version, but it is a combo Welder Rose engine. So yeah, you'll see what I mean and how that all works. But yeah, thanks so much for watching. And I guess we'll just jump right into the deck profile. Yeah, so obviously you're playing Salamence, so you need the man of the hour, if you will. You need Salamence V. Now, Salamence V, we have 3 of them here. Let me put this down. 3 Salamence V. Now, Salamence V is a really interesting card because for 3 energy, you can do 30 damage to all of your opponent's Pokemon, including their active. So, not a bad damage spread option early game, or against certain decks. Damage spread might be really powerful. So that's a very good first attack. The second attack is just a straight 160 damage for 4 colorless. Nothing really to write home about there, but don't sleep on the first attack of the V. And then we also have 3 of the Salamence VMax. 3 Salamence VMax. This Pokemon for 1 colorless energy, so pretty cheap cost. You do 40 damage to 2 of your opponent's Pokemon. I believe that's what it says. 40 to 2. Let me see. I believe it's 40 to 2. Definitely check that. It might be 40 to 1, but I think it's 40 to 2 Pokemon. So that's also good for sniping, setting up other, especially in combo with other things. It's a very good attack. Second attack is really the one that you mostly build the deck for, which is 4 colorless, 240 damage. But you can't use this attack the next turn. Very similar to Zacian's attack. So if you switch out and then go back into it, then yes, you can use it again. But 240 damage is pretty dang good, but there's even other things in this deck that allow you to do even more damage than that. So we have a 3-3 line of Salamence and Salamence VMax. As I was saying, there's tons of ways to power this up. But in terms of that power-up engine, part of it is Rose, which we'll talk about in a second, but Rose would require some other draw power. So we are going to be playing a 2-2 line of Silvally GX. Now, Silvally, if you're not familiar, it has the ability Disc Reload. And Disc Reload basically says, once during your turn, you may draw until you have 5 cards in hand. Now, its second attack, Brave Buddies, does 120 if you played a supporter, which you might often be doing. And if your opponent's Pokemon has an Ultra Beast, it knocks it out with the GX. So certainly options there if Ultra Beasts ever become meta relevant. But you're probably not attacking with this. Let's just be honest. But it is an option, right? But you're really using these for the Disc Reload feature. So you're using that to draw, that Disc Reload function to draw. And then you also have Heatran GX. Heatran GX here is really good with its Burning Root ability. You can move fire energy to this Pokemon when it becomes active. Steaming Stomp does a solid 130, so depending on the matchup, you can make that prize trade really difficult for them by going 3 prizes, 2 prizes, 3 prizes. But Hot Burn GX is the main reason this is in the deck, because if you have a bunch of energy on the field, you can then bring this up and do 350 damage with 7 energy on. So another great attacker in this deck. So 1 Heatran GX. We also have 1 Volcanion. Just in case, you start the game and you're able to get it out and you're going second, you can accelerate 3 energy with that Volcanion Flare Starter attack. Also, High Heat Blast is going to be good if you face Decidueye or other decks. We have one Phione. You know, Phione's just nice to sort of shuffle something out of the active if you need. Yeah, just good, especially if you're doing a bunch of spread damage. You can put things onto the bench, force them to bring other things up, and say, hey, you can give me another thing to knock out or whatever. So good for the spread damage ability. Now, in terms of more draw power, we have 2 Crobat Vs and 1 Dedenne. So all of that in general sort of rounds out all the draw power of this deck. And you're gonna see in a second why we want a lot of draw power. This is, I would say, probably a very turbo version of Salamence. But yeah, we're gonna want that draw power because of one of the supporters that we're playing in particular. But we are playing 4 Welders, because this is a fire-based Salamence build. And then the other trainer that we're playing that is another acceleration engine is the new Rose. Now, the new Rose trainer, what it does is, you know, when you play it, you can put 2 energy, I think 2 basic energy, but 2 energy from your discard to one of your VMax Pokemon. So this just straight up accelerates 2 energy to a VMax, but when you do, you have to discard your entire hand. So you can kind of see like, okay, well, if I have to discard my whole hand, how am I gonna draw again? And that is why we have Silvally. Preferably you would do Rose, Silvally. Shout out again to the Slowpoke Well, Shay out there, shout out to you. He actually like gave me a bit of the inspiration for Silvally because he has a Gardevoir VMAX build that used Silvally, and I was like, oh, that's a great card for this combo. So just, you know, just know like I was certainly not big brain enough to think of that on my own. And in terms of the rest of the supporter line, we have 2 Professor's Research, just for even more draw power. Might not be necessary. You could maybe find room for other things in there, but I feel like 2 Professor's Research ain't bad. And 1 Boss's Order, just because maybe you want to bring something else up and Phione ain't doing it for you. So now we got to find these Pokemon, right? So we have 4 Quick Balls. We have also 4 Pokemon Communications. Pokemon Communications help us find any of our Pokemon, including the VMAXs and the Silvally GXs. I thought about maybe running even Cherish Balls in here because you are running Silvally, but honestly, it didn't really matter. I think a 4-4 split of those is probably good enough to find you what you need when you need it. But really, you want to prioritize getting out the VMAX and the Silvally. Those are the key things. Outside of that, we also have 4 switch cards. Switching can be important, especially if you have a Salamence VMax that gets injured. You don't want it to take another hit, so you can switch, maybe bring up Heatran or switch into another Salamence VMax that's not hurt. We also have 2 Fire Crystals, because yes, while we do play Rose, sometimes you don't want to discard your whole hand. You may want to find some fire energy because you have a Welder and not a Rose in hand, so 2 Fire Crystals seems pretty good. We're also running 2 Hyper Potions. I'm not entirely sure if this is that useful. I'm really experimenting with, okay, if healing 120 damage maybe once or even twice off of a Pokemon is really going to be a big deal, maybe. This can get around the new Mimikyu because if you do it, you can do it to an active Pokemon, and so cool, you don't need to worry about how Mallow and Lana interacts with that. But I even considered going up to a 4 count of this and kind of making this a very healy version of Salamence VMAX, but didn't end up doing that. But it's something to consider for sure. And we also have 1 Ordinary Rod to find a couple of extra energy in the discard if you need, or to bring out, you know, anything you might have had to discard early. And then we have 1 Reset Stamp. Again, if you are able to get that perfect prize trade of 3 and then a 2, then that is going to set up a perfect Reset Stamp situation where they are going to have a hard time getting out of that. And now we get to the stadiums, which is also fun. We have 2 giant Hearths, which gets you your fire energy. We also have 2 of the new Spikemuth Stadium. Now, Spikemuth is fun because you do have a whole spread ability in this. And you're also hitting 240, maybe more with certain modifiers that we'll cover in a second, but this places 2 damage counters on a Pokemon when it moves from the active to the bench, including your own, right? So you have to be aware of that. But the nice thing about this is you can force your opponent to move a little more easily with Phione. And if you're doing a lot of spread damage, you can Phione them and then Boss Order, and you get even more damage counters onto the board. Maybe set yourself up for some, you know, late game using just the V, 30 damage to the board. Maybe that takes you 2 or 3 prizes on some of these smaller Pokemon. So I quite like playing around with Spikemuth in this deck. And now we get to the energy. We are gonna have 5 fire and 9 fire energy total, which is maybe enough. You could maybe find room for other fire energy, but keep in mind, this is all colorless. But 9 fire energy is certainly enough for Volcanion and Heatran to use. Everything else in the deck uses colorless energy, so I feel like 9 is a good count there. And we also have 3 of the new, I don't even know what they're called, strong energy or something. Basically what this does is, if it is attached to a colorless Pokemon, that's a key thing. You can't attach this to Volcanion or Heatran, don't do that. But if it's attached to a colorless Pokemon, that Pokemon's attacks do 20 more damage to the active. Now, keep in mind that's 20 more damage to the active, so the spread ability of Salamence, it would only do 20 more damage to whatever's active, not to every Pokemon or whatever's on the bench. But with these, if you get 1 or maybe 2, that's probably the most you'll get on. But if you get 2 of these on, you're going from 240 to 280 damage, right? 280 damage, you Phione it to the bench, and then you do 40 damage to 2 Pokemon? That's 320, right? So just there, you're knocking out most VMAXs. Combine that with, if you had a Spikemuth in play when you did that, that's 340 damage. So you can hit into an Eternatus VMAX for a lot, and then you can combo the Spikemuth Phione. Yeah, there's a lot of really good stuff that you can do with this combination, I think. This would take, I think, somebody really planning their gameplay out. And yes, there are definitely ways I think that you could tweak this deck. The Hyper Potions example of one of the things that maybe you take out, find something else in here for either consistency or a different attacker. But overall, I do like this nature of this deck with the Silvallis. You use the Rose really well in this deck, Welders, etc. You see a lot of your deck very fast. You can put a lot of damage across the board, and then you can also hit really big with the Salamence VMax second attack for 240. But that is going to do it. Thank you so much for watching this video. Hopefully you'll like this Salamence deck. There's a lot of other ways to build this deck as well that I'm going to start playing around with in the next few weeks. Hard to say exactly what my next decks that I'm going to cover are, but yeah, let me know what you think. Subscribe if you like this stuff. Like I said, check me out on Twitch if you want to maybe catch some of these live when I make them. And other than that, I hope y'all are having a lovely day, and I'll catch y'all in a future video. Carpe awesome.